You can still put in a 6x6 post there.
Yeah.
It's just not warranty worthy. You're not getting enough concrete. But if you're doing a whole subdivision, you're saving a lot of concrete. Another thing we don't do, we don't mix our own concrete. So a lot of guys will either use Sakrete and mix it in the hole, or they have little mixers on site. We actually have a company-owned and operated concrete truck. So Bayshore Concrete was a company that used to do our concrete. The company bought Bayshore Concrete, so now we have our own concrete trucks. So what that means is we use the correct density concrete. So we use 25 to 30 MPa, depending on the area. So it allows us to do two things. One, it allows us to get the correct density so we can level and lift each post. Okay, that's really, really important. The reason you need to do that is a couple reasons. One, grading is never straight, so typically grading will curve down where the water is draining. So you're going to have to lift some sections and drop some sections. You're not going to have a perfectly level fence. So because of that, you have to be able to bring some posts a little higher and bring some posts a little lower. So this acts as a base to be able to do that. A second thing it does is it doesn't matter if you go 3.5 or 4 feet or even a little bit lower than 4 feet. If your post is on raw ground and you have a ton of concrete around, water will still drain at 4 feet. It'll still drain, there's still moisture there, it can still freeze. So even if you have a ton of concrete around it, if you have water underneath that freezes, that's what can help push the post up. And that's why we can give you a 5-year lift and lean warranty, because we have the concrete below grade. And finally, for residential fencing, concrete is always well below grade. Okay, a lot of people ask me, well, why don't you bring it above? Why don't you use a sonotube? It's the last thing you want. Your drainage lines right now are holding water. They're not going to drain perfect. Now you're putting a post near the swales, wherever the property line is. They're quite close to the swales, sometimes on the swales. And so what happens, that slows the drainage even a little bit further, so it'll never be perfect. But you must make sure that the concrete is below grade so that the water can drain around the post. So the concrete is always 4 inches, 8 inches, up to a foot below grade, and that's so that the water can drain around it. Okay, it's a pressure treated post. It doesn't matter if it sits in water. That's not an issue. Okay, so that's the warranty. Things we can't cover, read our website. You can go to Home Depot and ask them for their lumber warranty. We can't cover natural wood behavior. It doesn't really matter if you have pressure treated or cedar. You're going to get a crack on a post here and there. You're going to get a warp on a board. Wood will shrink. That will all happen. The reason we install the boards instead of side-by-side overlaid like this is so when they do shrink, you're not going to notice that much gaps. You might notice a little bit of gapping by the posts once they shrink, but you can always add in a little strip, and the majority of them, because they're overlaid, are going to remain quite private. Okay. Payment terms are really fair. So if you guys have seen the references, I'm not sure if on the WeChat you sent those attachments, but I'll send it when we have the email group. So whether we do a group of 20 homes or 30 homes or 40 homes, there's never a deposit. We take a fully signed contract. We do take credit card information, but we have a clause on the contract, and I can send that to you with the email that guarantees that we don't process 1 penny till the work is complete. So everything is done clean off your property. Yes, we'll process the money the next day, but we'll do it after the job is complete. Okay. We also offer up to 3-month no interest payment plans. It's available to everybody. There's no credit check and there's no confidentiality breach. If we have a contract and it says September 30th completion and you write 3 payments, we take the first payment September 30th or when we're done, the second one October, the third one November. Okay, so 3 no interest payment plans is available. Price wise, we're very well priced as long as you compare apples to apples. The same fence is the same fence. So a lot of people say 6x6 post, 6-foot privacy. Those fences start at 35, 36. It all depends on how you frame them. If you wanted a simple fence like number 5, right? Board side by side like this, and 2x4 trims. When I say 2x4 trims, it doesn't matter that the posts are 6x6. When you're connecting the posts, right, before you put the boards on, you can see what's connecting them left to right. That's just a 2x4. It just means it's 1.5 by 3.5 connectors, just cheaper to frame. That's why it's 35, 36. A lot of people will just write 6-foot privacy fence, 6x6 posts, and give you a price. The one that we do that is most popular in Aurora, last year was 38, this year is $40 a foot, is fence number 8 because it's the closest to what the builder does. We do a little bit of a modification from what the builder does. So, 1, we always use an overlay privacy board. So it's always overlaid. I can see that one is butted. Okay. 2, we use 7 2x6s per section. So we don't use any 2x4s that connect them. We use 2x6s. They use 2x6s as well, but on the outside, they often use a 1x6 or 1x4 because it's on the outside, so they don't have to worry about it. The reason we use 7 2x6s is so everybody gets the same look. So we use 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and then 1 flat, 1 upright, and 1 flat to do the I-beam. Everybody's fence looks the same. The second thing we do, you can never cover up all the gaps on the bottom. Impossible. Because when the grade drops, you can only put a 2x6 level, and then you can only bring whatever you bring below it so far. But what we do is between the 2x6s on the bottom, we actually sandwich in a 1x6 board. Again, that's more work for us. But what that does is it helps to minimize the gaps. Because even though you can only put the 2x6 level, if you put a 1x6 underneath, you can reduce the gaps a lot. So when you see them stepped, you're going to see these bigger gaps underneath. With our stepping, we'll reduce those gaps by putting in the kick plate. Okay? So those are the two things that we do differently. So at $40 a foot with 7 2x6s per section in the kick plate, it's actually a pretty good rate. Last year we were charging 38. This year we've done lots of subdivisions in Aurora.
Does that include
$40.
gates as well? Or?
So gates are $200 for a matching gate,
Okay.
$60 for an insert. But it's not that straightforward because if you have a 4-foot section, let's just go over it quickly. Let's just say this is the back of your neighbor's house and this is the back of the other house, okay? So, and this is the back fence. So if you're doing a fence here that you're sharing, this is neighbor 1, this is neighbor 2. So if it's $40 a foot, you guys are paying $20 each
Yeah.
because you're sharing that line. So usually, let's say you have an 8-foot split. You might have a 4-foot, 2-foot, 4-foot, 4-foot, it depends. So let's just say we have an 8-foot split.
Yeah.
So this is going to be 4 feet and 4 feet. So one neighbor number 1 gets a gate. It's $200. If you want an iron insert, it's separate, $60, it's a choice, but that's $200. Neighbor number 2 says, look, just close this section. So if you want to close a 4-foot section, you're paying 4 feet times $40, not $20, because it's your property. You're not sharing that. So you're either paying $160 to close it,
Yeah.
or you're paying $200 for the gates. So when you consider that we're using heavy-duty hinges and latches, I'll send it to you from Nouveau Iron, $50 retail minimum. You're really not paying any more for the gate as you are for the fence. Just some people will say, okay, $100 gate, and they'll charge you for the 4 feet. We just charge you for the gate.
When you put the gate in, do you put 2 posts? Or do you use the house as a...
Yeah, so if it's 4 feet or approximately 4 feet, you can't put it in a post because you can't put a post near the foundation. So you got to just frame it to the wall, maximize the space and lag bolt it.
Okay.
If you have 6 feet to the wall, then you have to put in a post, a 2-foot section, but because the post is at least 2 feet
Gotcha.
from the wall, so it's safe.
Yeah.
And then you put the gate.
Anyways, gotta go. Thank you very much.
Sure.
We'll be in touch.
I have your email.
Yeah.
Terrific.
One question.
Sure.
So the fence the starting point, where's the usual
Yeah.
practice like?
So that always differs. So when we look at the surveys, we usually just go to the furthest house back. Usually, so if it's one house is here and one house is here, you usually go to the furthest house back, right? But then it varies. You might have a hose here, so you might need to go a little further. You might have an AC here, so it doesn't work. So when we get the surveys, we'll actually send our guy. We'll do a scale drawing for everybody, and we'll recommend where to put it. You'll also have an opportunity to be here when they measure. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, but we'll make recommendations. Unless you have a ton of room, we don't want to come to the front of the home where you don't have access, right?
Question.
Take care of that.
So, in some areas, between the property lines, it's really, really steep, like where the water runs down the back. So when you put the post in the middle, like what's going to happen with the drainage?
I mean, the drainage will slow down, but that's why you have to put the concrete below grade. There's no way to completely keep the drainage perfect. I mean, it's not perfect as it is, but once you put the post down, you know, if the grade is sufficiently sloped, it'll still drain, and if the concrete is below grade, it'll still drain around the post. But again, it won't be perfect. There's not much you can do about that, except for to keep the concrete below grade. Some people with the concrete right above grade, and that'll really disrupt the drainage. Technically, they're not supposed to put the swale on the property line. Practically, they do it all the time. So, but technically, it should be inside or outside one of the yards. Okay, but we can only follow the survey. We can't follow the swale lines. Right?
What's the starting point? Like this side, we have the retention wall. We start from the retention wall.
From the retaining wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can only go so close. We would check it out, and then we would advise. So you're saying you have a retaining wall in the back here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would take a look at it. We would get as close as possible, and then we would assess.
What
it.
the guy said is the city have has a bylaw have regulation.
I don't know. You guys should find that out.
Have you done any fences in Aurora before?
Have we done?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done about 300 homes last year. and
Any with retaining walls?
15? No.
Okay.
No. We've done sidelines where they have walkout basement, but I haven't had their retaining. Are they on both sides?
Yes.
Yeah, both sides. Both sides.
Let me take one quick look. Just give me one
Yeah.
quick second.